So thank you everyone for your time this morning. I'm Jake Heimpel, and I'm a solutions engineer at D2L. I've been with the company for about 3 years, and I'm really excited to present to you guys Brightspace, our learning management system. As we get this PowerPoint kind of set up, I want to put in the mind just right away an objective for something to think about as we go through everything. And what I want you to begin thinking about is one tool or maybe one feature that you actually see from the platform today that your faculty, maybe faculty first. Is everyone here faculty? And anyone else a student side? And then maybe the administration side. Oh, okay, perfect. That's fine. Okay. Perfect. So what I'd like to start off with, just before we actually get into the demonstration, you have 2 quick slides. It's going to be very painless. But this is how I kind of like to frame up the things we like to do as faculty and as students, as users of the platform, right? And correct me if I'm wrong if these things aren't important to you, but when I normally speak to faculty, these are the things that they genuinely care about. So, it's the idea of just accessing courses very quickly, getting from one course to another course, but navigating the platform very seamlessly. The second thing is around creating course content. As Ginger kind of mentioned, our migration process is very seamless. So we're going to kind of take care of everything from BlackBoard to D2L. But when we're looking to add new content into Brightspace and personalizing the learning experience through some smart tools that we'll touch on, that's something I've also heard. The third thing is about managing an in-flight course. What I mean by this is faculty, they don't want to be restricted to just grading assignments just necessarily in the platform, but they want the flexibility of actually doing this through mobile applications, things like tablets, and having the flexibility of doing it on the fly. So doing it when you're in an area of when you don't have Wi-Fi. And then the last is, kind of moving away from the idea of having Excel spreadsheets where you have to go in and manually try to identify those trends and outliers in data. You want rich visualizations that are going to help show those outliers and the trends in the student performance and provide it to you in a dashboard kind of way. Is this kind of in line with the things that you're kind of looking for in a new age LMS? Yeah, perfect. And then if we have time, maybe we'll touch on the student experience. And this is something that I often see from students. And coming from a student as a D2L as well, these are some of the things that I cared about. So firstly, we want intuitive systems and applications that are going to help manage our workload, letting us know when things are due very seamlessly. That notification and communication is so important to a modern learner. The second thing, very similarly, we want to be able to understand our progress and how well we're progressing in all of our courses very, very seamlessly. Once again, coming back to that idea of having rich visualizations. The third thing, just something as simple as navigating content easily. Having a beautiful learner experience is something that's important. The fourth thing, reflecting on the experience and building a portfolio of our accomplishments as we continue our progression throughout the learning experience. And then lastly, having the ability to review and annotate notes whenever and wherever. So as I kind of promised, that's the end of the slides, and we'll jump right into the actual presentation. So as I mentioned, we're going to start to look at the platform from the perspective of our professor, our faculty member, Professor Ferdinand Convery. As we can see here, this is what we refer to as the personal dashboard in Brightspace. It's a visual representation of all of our courses that we're enrolled in. As we mentioned, one of the first things that our professor cares about is to be able to access courses very seamlessly. So up at the top here, we have what we refer to as our mini bar. This is static throughout the platform. It helps ensure that you can access course from course very easily, as well as get a summary of all of your notifications. So as a professor, I can navigate from my astronomy CBE course to my English 101 course, And then when I click My Home, I'm taken back to my personal dashboard. On the right-hand side, you can see this idea of a summary level notifications. So what I can see here is a summary of all of my email as well as my instant notifications across all of my courses. Information around course activity, such as when a student's actually submitted to an assignment. This is going to provide me a link that can take me directly to that assignment so I can begin grading. We've kind of improved those workflows to make your life just a lot easier. As we kind of mentioned, we've kind of streamlined this or quoted this new terminology, and it's called clicks kill. So what we're trying to do is provide those seamless workflows for you. And then the last here is just around your subscription alerts. So when a student is actually providing some collaboration towards asynchronous discussions, this is all going to be kind of summarized here. As I was kind of mentioning, below is what we refer to as our personal dashboard. The visual representation of our course. This is something that we can use as faculty member to personalize the experience for our students. I also have the ability down below just to very easily search for a particular course. And when I click favorite, it's added directly to my dashboard. Now, something that's kind of synonymous in Brightspace is the idea of drag and drop. So if I want to change the dashboard image, the visual representation, all I have to do is just drag and drop it onto this tile. And we can see that everything's now been updated. Very similarly, we look at things about social collaboration in the platform that really helps with the actual adoption of the technology. Through things like a profile, we can very easily just drag and drop a profile image and everything's rendered. It makes it easy for you as faculty to get items on your desktop into the platform in a more streamlined manner. Something else that we've kind of identified in working with our clients over the years, and it's the idea of having a setup checklist. So one thing that we've noticed when working with faculty over the years is, when moving from one LMS to another LMS, we want to have the idea of understanding what to do to build a successful online course. And this is actually something we've identified as well. So we've built a setup task list. And what this is, it's a list of tasks that we as faculty can have access to. We can see the first one here is the copy or import a course package. Now, what we're doing here, which is going to make your life easier, is we're providing some description about what this is, some additional resources, and direct access about where you go in the particular course to complete this action. Now, let's just pretend that I've actually already completed this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check this off. We can see that the task is just kind of counted down and has really helped managing the success of building an online course. Now, one of the most important things, and obviously an online course, is the idea of adding a syllabus. So let's just do this right now. So as you can see, I'm going to click on Go to Syllabus, and it takes me directly to my Physics 1202, to the syllabus tool, and now I have a guided tour. The guided tour is saying, hey, click on here, because this is where you're going to drag and drop your syllabus, and this is where your students are going to access it. So once again, I'm going to add a syllabus to my course. We see I have some color differentiation at the bottom here. But one important note that I want to kind of touch on here, and we can see that our syllabus is now rendering in line. And there's two kind of important things that I think we can take from this. One is that Brightspace is actually wrapping what we call HTML5 around all of the documents, all of the multimedia in this. And the importance of that, to your perspective. Yep. Yeah, sure. You could through the editor. Yep, exactly. Yes, exactly. But some of the important things about a usability perspective is that no longer are we going to have issues when our learners have to view a video in Mozilla Firefox, and then some have to use another video in Google Chrome. It's all kind of browser agnostic, device agnostic, which is really great. The second thing that I think is really important about this is that idea of the learner experience. No longer Windows is going to be kind of popping open and open. We can view things directly in line here, which is really kind of great. So we've just added our syllabus. What do you guys think of that so far? Does that look pretty easy? Sure. The what, sorry? Yeah. So it's still the same file type. What we're actually doing is we just have a native content viewer. So we can view things such as Microsoft Excel, PDF, PDF, PowerPoints, Word, you name it. Does that help? Perfect. Exactly. The same look here as well. What we've also done, just to kind of touch on some accessibility, what we can do, and I'll show you this afterwards as well, we can just click a button and just view it as text. It's going to just view it as blank text, and that's really just to kind of ensure, that we're meeting those AODA compliance, the WCAG compliance, all of that, so that screen readers can actually view all of that material. Yeah, so we can touch on some of the editing when we build out some content a little bit further. But we can download all of the content as well here, work on it offline, submit it back, just overwrites it. Yep, exactly. And I noticed there was one other question. Did it already get answered? Oh. Perfect. Thanks. So the next thing I want to touch on, it's more of just a question. It's, as faculty, what do you guys think about the idea of, creating some personal connection with your students the first time they actually log into your course? A video of you welcoming them in some form of announcement or something saying, hey, thanks for taking my course. Is that something that, you think would be kind of interesting in order to kind of enhance the online experience? Perfect. So what I want to touch on here is, our announcements tool. But this is a tool that's kind of consistent throughout the platform, and it's what we refer to as our text editor. Very similar to what you would see in Microsoft Word. You can copy stuff from Microsoft Word. Everything's going to format directly the same, except we've introduced some additional functionality. I'll give you a little heads up here. This tool name is so technical that we actually don't allow our development team to name it anymore. And it's what we call insert stuff. So what this tool does is it allows us to grab media from different areas, such as YouTube, Flickr, in integrations such as Kaltura, but we've also included additional functionality, and it's called Video Note. And what this allows me to do as an instructor is to leverage my webcam and create a video very easily. So I can say, hey everyone, welcome to Physics 1202. I'm Professor Ferdinand Convery. I really appreciate you taking the time in my course. Let me know if you have any questions because I'm here for you in the online experience. And now when I stop and I click next, once again, touching on that notion of accessibility and including alternate text on things like multimedia and images. And now what we can see is we have a nice embedded video the first time a student has joined the course. Yep.
Anytime he publishes here, he's going to get like a little has been published and created. So anytime action happens, you get a notification that action happened.
And now, once again, we can see that idea of personal video being kind of welcoming to the students right away. Yep. Of course. Yep. Yep. Okay. Exactly.
You can go further and put above the course. You have a global CSS that goes across the whole program, a library that you point to and share folder.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of that not only for the CSS in the actual data elements, but also in the UI UX. So there's a whole angle to where we can do some branding that is kept simple.
And there's
Also, what we're seeing is for a lot of our faculty, I want to do a video like this, so maybe I'm teaching multiple sections. Maybe this is a generic feedback for you that I want to use. Being able to reuse this video, create the central library.
perfect. Yep. Exactly. Yes, so you can do audio as well. Yep.
I can't stress enough how much this editor is of value. Anybody care about math, communication, things like that? So we've got a very robust graphical editor and
Yep.
very important for the science programs, math programs, and tech. So when this exports, when we use this editor, it's putting it into the language that's reader accessible, all that same stuff, but it's not that so super, super important. And I don't know if anybody is doing anything with learning objects or wants to share curriculum across an organization, but we'll get into some of that later.
Yes. Yep.
Anywhere you can enter anything in the system to have this edited. So in the questions, and question options, and the feedback, and the personalized feedback that we give the students, in the tests that students can take. Right? The wrong answer. Yeah, so we don't have word count, but we have field count. So you can create one of the field size that we have. No real.
Perfect. So just kind of moving into the next section, we said that, another thing that's kind of, sorry, the things that are important to faculty is, getting content into the platform, adding new curriculum to it, whether it's a new weekly PowerPoint or additional content. Let's kind of look at this. And this is what I've just clicked on, is what we refer to as our content tool. This is the linear view that a student is going to see when they're kind of moving through your course. On the left-hand side, you can see our table of contents. You see each of the modules, or the units, or the weeks. It can be whatever you want to call it. It's very flexible in that regard. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on our energy and momentum section here, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to begin adding new content to the platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some assets such as a PowerPoint, an MP4, a PDF, and a Word file, and I'm just going to drag and drop this into the platform. Now, once again, you can see that Brightspace is kind of taking all the work for us. All this content is now being rendered inline. It's being wrapped in that HTML5 to ensure that it's all browser as well as device agnostic. You can see it's just taking a minute here to load. So what do you guys think of that? Does that look pretty easy to you? Yep, perfect. So another things that I want to touch on, and this is kind of just touching on what we've just learned from your IT section, and it was the idea that a lot of your faculty is actually using some multimedia from another service, things like YouTube, things like Vimeo, and we've actually kind of seen a trend in that faculty have sometimes maybe not the technical expertise to grab that embed code and understand where to put it in the platform. So we've made it super easy for you to do so now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Vimeo. I have a video set up here. And all I'm going to do is now just going to copy and paste the URL. Now, how we get new video into the platform is just clicking on this big blue new button. And from here, I can click on video. And all I have to do is just paste that URL. And we can see that Brightspace is once again, taking the work out for us. It's going out to the internet. It's grabbing the title. It's grabbing all that embed code, and it's including it into the platform. And now once again, when I click save, we can see that this video is rendering full inline. It's very kind of seamless process. I'm just going to navigate through our breadcrumb trail here, and I'm going to touch on a few other content items. Sorry.
Yeah, I think basically what it's doing is what we can do as well, though. So remember that research stuff framework we saw, where it's stuff, right? It's going to work in places that we need it that because that's meant to be a plugin framework as well. So if you have another service, a library service that you want to just build like a quick little integration for, that you can just search library reserves or something like that, and just search it directly from the interface, you can do that. It's the whole plugin framework.
That's great. So I'm going to navigate back using our breadcrumb trail here. We're going to be going back to our energy momentum. What I want to do is just show you the variety of options that we can have to add new content to the platform. So once again, we can see things like a learning objects repository. I'm not sure if that's something that you have available to you today, but I do want to touch on a few different functionality within this particular tool. So often I give the example of having one piece of content in a master repository that's kind of shared and leveraged in maybe 8 or 10 different courses. And now oftentimes, we have to go out, and when that document gets old, we have to update it in 8 different spots. But how great would it be if you could just update in that master section, and those changes could be kind of cascaded down to each of those courses? Is that something that you think would be beneficial or provide some time savings to yourself? Perfect. So what we can do here is we can actually search for different repositories, whether it's on a department or based on a particular tag. But I can search here. I can grab a different asset. And we can see here we have a flexible different options for how we want to retrieve the actual object. So we can have that dynamic link, which is always going to point to that master copy. We can lock it to this particular version because this is the version that's most applicable to our course, or we can copy it as content, and then we can make further edits and manipulation to the particular piece. So this is kind of a repository that allows us to share, reuse content throughout the department or institution. And now what I want to touch on are some of the other core tools in Brightspace. So when I click on New, we can see we have some other tools such as a checklist, often used to set up and manage the expectations of a course. We have things like a discussion tool that once again allows us to use that insert stuff framework to have video and increase that kind of social collaboration. Assignments, once again allowing us to use things like standardized assessment frameworks such as rubric. Things like a quiz. The quiz tool has over 12 different types of questions and allows us to include different multimedia. And then lastly, a survey, often used for continual course improvement. Would anybody kind of like me to jump into any of these particular tools and see what any of that stuff looks like?
Two different views in our discussion forum. If you want to jump into the discussion, you can see. We have this more threaded view. You see everything in one. There's only two discussions here. But we also have a reading view, grid view. We took that away last year, where it was kind of like an email. You can see like the thing, you can go and click into the discussions and view it in the preview mode. We took that away, and our clients were revolted, and we brought back a view. They all loved that view, which is so we kept both views in, right? So.
Yes, it does. Yep. And all of that can be tied to learning objectives as well. So, we can see here, I'll actually show you how to tie a learning objective to maybe a discussion here as well, and how seamless that process really is. But we can see here, on this particular group discussion, we're actually leveraging this physics problem solving rubric. Yep.
So right now what we're doing is we're in as the instructor. If this is an accessible object, we can just jump in and start. So if you click on the little arrow going down, just click on assess, and you can assess the topic, and you can see the individual student topics. So if you jump in right there, and for instance, you see all of his posts, and we might not have any posts here.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't have any posts, but this is where you would assess him, you can that, and see his posts all. Yep. And that's the key. Right? Jumping around. Let's go.
Perfect. Yep.
Classified in categories. It's not metadata per se, but it is metadata shadow classification. Right? So we're not tagging each question type, but taking each question as system. So is that your question that you guys are bringing this back to? Oh, yeah, you could. Yeah, it's based on what your assignment is. And then what we can do is we take those questions in the test, and we can associate them with specific objectives or outcomes. Pool, reporting stuff pool, but also this testing, those questions can be available and report up to the higher level. Absolutely. So if you go to the class list, let's go to the class list, and in all these views, you're going to see the view by. Right? You see how Jake can pull down there? You view by, go down to the list, the class list above the search box.
Okay.
And you can view by groups and sections. So everywhere throughout the system, you can do the assignments or your discussions, or you can do, so go to groups, click on groups and apply it. It'll show you all the different group types that are part of here. So you can click that and see if we get physics groups. By the way, there are different groupings of students in the course. Right? And then you can click apply there. Filters everybody in that list. You can just say, I want to click everybody in that list and email them quickly. Or I want to view their progress. Right? So it's the context for how these communication tools and these filtering tools all work throughout the course environment that make it a nice experience. Communication experience.
Perfect.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, so if you go to the group, the grade center, same thing, see the view by. I can do the groups, I can do the sections, and I can segment them based on that and grade a group, just basically give a particular grade to a group for that one assignment. So I'm not really the problem with so no problem, remove that hassle of having to
I'm just curious as to how it's set up.
yeah, no, it's
Is it wanted in the top left?
well,
Technically,
yeah.
if I had groups along the top, I mean, it sounds
Can you do a lot of group work? Is there a lot of that? Okay, so can you show the workflow of create a group?
Yeah, sure.
So in the past, that's been a tough thing, but you create groups and you got to create people in association, discussions, and assignments. And, what Jake will do is show you how you can create a group. You'll create a group, groups of 5 in the class. You'll create an assignment, group restricted discussions, and make all those associations and have them come together.
Yeah, it's very much almost like a wizard where, it's kind of walking us through the process of here's what we're going to focus on, we're going to make some adjustments, and then move on to the next step. So as you can see here, I've just given it a name. As Stefan was saying, we can have various enrollment types, whether we want groups of a particular number or number of groups. So what we're going to say here is we're going to have groups of 5. We're just going to call these demo. So we're actually going to add a prefix here for us. And then we have some additional options here. So when I click on advanced, what I can do is I can randomize them as well as auto-enroll all of the new users into a particular group. Also here, we have the ability just to create automatic workspaces. So already kind of creating the groups, but taking it another step and then creating those actual discussions, providing them with an area where they can collaborate called a locker. And then lastly, adding assignment folders for each of those particular groups. So now we can see, I'm just going to add this to a new forum, which is just the classification of it. And now this is where we can begin to identify what those particular tools are called, the actual assignment folders, whether it's a particular submission or subject.
This is going to work a little differently too from the assignment perspective because now the group submits one assignment, right? Not individuals, it's one group assignment. So what Jake's done now is he's created 4 groups, he's created a new discussion forum, he's created 4 group restricted discussions, made the association, created 4 collaboration areas, and then the assignment. Yeah, so what you would do then, you wouldn't create a group assignment there, you'd create an individual, right? But you could grade them like groups, right? So you can still have the groups, but not have the group assignment element, right? So you still have that group, you filter the group and get the grade center down.
Yep.
So two questions. First question is associating with group with if I add to one group, does it add to all groups?
You don't assign the rubric to the group, you assign the rubric to the accessible element.
So inside the discussion boards created, and the group is there, and then that gets broadcast through the groups.
There's no association having been made with groups. Now, what you could do, if you wanted different rubrics for different groups, the same accessible assignment, you could just have multiple rubrics. Right? But yeah, we're not assigning the rubric to the individuals, we're assigning it to the accessible element itself.
So just to be clear, if I had 10 groups in one discussion board question, I put that question one time, so then, thinking of a workflow question, the way inside the terms, people have this to the current course, update our current course from and so that's kind of where looking at discussing groups don't have to be is that workflow of basically copying the course into a shell? Is that still be work you have to modify how the workflow that's the course.
Trying to say back to what I thought I heard. So,
Yeah, sure.
folks, is there people? Sorry, probably. I'll just. So I think what I heard was course to term to term, right? There is your will the structure come over? So but right now you're having to recreate the groups each term, or is it terms or the groups currently coming up? Okay. So the default of desire to learn is the groups, the group elements that you create in this course will all come over in that course copy. So the same group categories. The number of groups in each category are going to change depending on the number of students in the course. You know what I mean? If it's a randomly enrolled group, it'll automatically create new groups when it gets to a certain size for you. So the workflow is one of a little more automated. I don't know if that's what you were hoping for. Okay.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that as well, that was like, remember when we kind of clicked on that one little checkbox there that was auto enroll? That's essentially what would happen, right? Those new users get added to those particular groups. Yep.
If you choose the auto enroll option. The reason you might not want to choose the auto enroll is if you're actually having the students self-organize. So that's another option there was the self-enrollment. Let them do their own thing. Yeah. So if Johnny doesn't get along with Jill, and you know that, then you can go and do that. So Jake will show you the interface for group management here, and you can jump into the group grid of any of these. And it's showing the enrollment. You can see who's in here, but there's the other interface where you can go in and just manage the whole thing. Just go to here. So there's the enrollment grid in the different groups that were automatically set up. You just go and toggle who's in what group if you want to change it.
Perfect. So I think what I'd kind of like to touch on next is the idea of associating those particular learning objectives to assessment items. And what we're going to do is move towards a tool called our Course Builder. So this is another tool that allows you as faculty or maybe potentially instructional designers to begin designing your courses. So what we can see here, and when this loads, we'll see a bunch of different learning objectives and competencies. But what's kind of unique about this is that they've been already shared down at the program level. So we've been given access to these from administrators and things like that, and they've been shared down to our particular course. And now what we have to do to actually associate these to a particular assessment item.
Just for 1 second.
Sure.
One of the things we heard coming into here was that, program level, like, okay, so we know that day in, day out, you got to do the basics from a faculty perspective of putting up the syllabus, doing the, and you saw how easy that was from just drag and drop and the basics. Sometimes programs have to do things like align to outcomes and reporting and things like that. But it's a hard thing to do when you have these program level outcomes and we got to implement them in the course, and how do you associate and that kind of jazz. So what we're going to show you here is an outcome structure that has been created at the program or the department level, pushed down. So all faculty have to do, all you have to do is show up at your class and just make the association of the learning outcome to the activity happening in the course. So here you see in the left-hand side the learning objectives that Jake has, and he can just drag it on over on top of the accessible element, which is that quiz, and it's now creating that threshold, and then you can go and put the rubric on it and say what's the threshold for achievement. Okay? So this might be applicable to a subset of folks here in the institution, we're not sure. This is not for everybody. We just want to make sure that you know that this is a pretty important part of what we do when we systematically look at program level outcomes. Sorry, Jake, I was up here.
No, that's fine. That's perfect. So, we've just added a learning objective here. But what I'd like to touch on next is, the kind of grading element and how grading can be very seamless and flexible in Brightspace. So first of all, let's kind of jump into our assignments tool. And we'll grade an assignment through an actual rubric here. So what's kind of nice about this particular tool is we can actually see the document in line here. So I'm looking at Megan's assignment here. I see everything in line. I see some information about the actual assignment. I see that there's a learning objective associated to this. But now I can leverage things like a rubric. But what's really nice about rubrics in Brightspace is that we can actually provide feedback automatically. So we can have a rubric that's set up that says, every time I check off level 4 strategic approach, I want it to provide some kind of generic feedback in the feedback area. So I'm going to go ahead through this, and I'll show you what the end result is. We can see here, now that we have, once again, leveraging that HTML editor, the text editor, but it's providing some generic feedback. And now we can take it a little bit further, creating a more personalized experience by, once again, leveraging things like recording audio as well as video. And then we can still, have the flexibility to provide some additional text in here as well, saying, hey, Megan, great job. Something that I will mention as well is we actually have some mobile applications. We have a tool called Brightspace Assignment Grader. And what that allows us to do is to actually sync and download all of the assignments out of Brightspace, annotate them, review them, still leverage a rubric, provide feedback in terms of audio as well as video, doing the same functionality that we can do in Brightspace here, but doing it on a tablet where we don't have access to Wi-Fi. So providing you the flexibility to grade wherever you want to grade and whenever you want to grade. And now when you're in the area where you have Wi-Fi again, just press sync and publish, and everything goes back up to Brightspace and provides that feedback to your students.
This is a pretty tool. It's our assignment tool and our grading tool, but we haven't created like the offline, the speed grading, whatever you want to call it. Of course, student to student, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next. You want render in line, quick grading, making sure that it's low barrier to get the job done compared to passing the test before.
So what I'd like to touch on now is just navigating back to our content and begin. Yep. Sure. Yeah, sure. So bulk edit essentially allows us to come in here and begin editing all of the areas at once. So we can begin adding dates and restrictions, description areas, things like this, adding images. There's one thing that I will kind of mention in terms of the bulk edit. And we have a tool called Manage Dates. So what Manage Dates does, and I'm not sure what your semester rollover process looks like, but you often kind of take one course, bring it over to a new course, and then have to adjust all of the dates in your courses. Yeah, so what Manage Dates actually does is it allows us to offset all of your current dates from that original course to reflect the current time period. We often kind of joke that the tool should be named, saves you 2 hours. Does that kind of help answer your question towards the bulk edit here? We still have access to things like our drag and drop tools to begin resequencing different learning materials. I can take this and put it into a different learning module here. Okay.
So we're not editing the test question in that sense. We're not editing the piece of content here, right? We're editing the properties around that, right? So same thing with your assignments. Go into bulk edit. Let's say it chooses everything that does bulk. Then choose everything bulk edit.
Oops, sorry.
Now you get a page. Here's all the properties associated with these assignments in the folders, and you can make all the date changes or the name changes you want here. Now, this is where you can go and do the date changes very on a one-out basis, one stream. But where Jake was talking about, if Jake goes to that tool, if you go to the Manage Dates tool,
Yep.
This Manage Dates tool is what lets you do all of those in just one step, right? Because usually you're starting your course one, but next you can calculate 2 days. You know how the number of days, or if you just want to calculate the number of days between them, you can just calculate between 2 calendar days, and it'll actually scale all your dates over. So,
What if you want to adjust
what you want to do, it's not going to do the accordion thing. It's going to just do a date referential date scaling. We're working on some pacing guides right now and pacing systems that are going to help us do that. That's particularly relevant to K-12 and a couple other areas where we're for online courses where you're looking at, I need to take a vacation in this middle, how do we actually do pacing across? So definitely something we're looking at for our big online programs. But we're not there yet.
Changing one syllable, but it changes all four.
The syllabus is typically a static document for it. Like it's not linked to the overall thing. Now, so let's go back to that concept, right? Who here is teaching multiple sections or supporting instructors teaching multiple sections? Okay? So, in that sense, right now with BlackBoard, you probably have distinct course sections set up, right? So it has its own content and things like that. One of the constructs within D2L is different than what you did. Is that we can have the master course and have subsections below it. So you're actually just teaching and managing one course, and the sections below are you're grading and interacting with them at that level. So in that sense, if you're using the master course construct and you want to change the syllabus and or the syllabus, so they need to learn English. If you change it once, then all those sections will actually get that update, right? But it's dependent on how you want to use course merge or if you want to keep them separate.
So basically, if say I have two different sections and I want to share or maybe 6 different facilitators and the filtering of the grades here, they can say, okay, one of this course and then this
Yep. Yeah, we can take it a step further too and say this facilitator only sees that group, that section, right? By enrollment, right? So what happens is that you have a course, and you have the sections below it, and we're actually enrolling the that facilitator in just that course section, which inherits the course up here. So it's a development construct, but one that in practice is very slick and streamlined for the end users. Right? And so what would happen there is, you remember when Jake went to the gradebook and he did the filtering on groups? The other one that you saw there was sections, right? Because there can be sections and groups. So if I'm a facilitator and I'm only assigned to section 1, I'll only see section 1 in my drop-down box. Whereas as the instructor, I'll see all the sections and I can filter or see everybody in one view or not.
Right. So inside this, I just want to make sure I understand these sections. Inside of the year, first semester, second semester, third semester, that's operate on that master course, and so also very similar to rotating these different sections.
Could, but in practice, what we're seeing more of is each term has its own course, and if there's separate sections happening in parallel, being taught in parallel, that's when that really leverages that. But you could do the rolling enrollment across courses, and we see that more in like our support for MOOCs or support for self-directed courses.
Go ahead.
It's like roll edit there. Get everything that's on here. Or you can go to the assignments, you go to the assignments tool.
Sure.
And you go to select everything and you. Now the interesting thing too here is that have you ever blown something away and gone, yeah. So we've actually built in recycler services as well. So that if you delete something, you're like, I didn't mean to do that. You bring it back with a vendor support ticket.
Is there how long is that tax?
Good question. I thought it was until someone. Actually, I don't know. It's a good question.
So if I log out of the system that day,
Yeah.
would it lose my stuff then?
Oh no. It's like it's just like your computer where that stays in the recycler until you delete it. I just don't know if there's a system administration that urges, but I don't think it just stays there.
So what I'd like to kind of jump into now is, we kind of touched on this idea of, sections and how we can have multiple sections enrolled into this one particular course. I'm going to touch on a tool here, a smart tool called release conditions. But just before we get into it, I'll kind of frame up what the actual tool does. So what a release condition does, it applies logic or criteria to learning content in your course to either show or hide based on that criteria. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just jump back into, this particular section here. And let's add some criteria to this. Let's say that, this kinematics equation stuff is only related to section 1. So we only want students who are enrolled into section 1 to see this particular content. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to click on our release conditions. And what you can see here is that we have over 30 different types of release conditions. These can be kind of stacked on top of each other, combined to really allow you a little flexibility to create a more dynamic course. So what I can say here is, your section enrollment is section 1, then I want you to see this content. So anyone else who's in section 2 or section 3 can no longer see this stuff. This allows us to build, pretty dynamic learning experiences. You think about the idea of personalization at scale. and immediately prescribing students who are kind of struggling. We can now provide them, a module of content when they've scored less than a 75% on a particular quiz. Or in the opposite case, providing those students who are excelling some more advanced material. Something that's kind of unique and kind of combines with this tool is a tool that we call the automated TA. I'll show you what this actually looks like.
Okay, all right, full disclosure. This is actually called Intelligent Agents, but we're trying to rename this tool something actually that you'll understand. Okay, so good job, Jake.
Yeah, but it is the kind of idea of having an automated TA, right? The idea that we're going to send workflow emails to certain students who actually meet certain criteria. So I set some up here, and it says, the TA will email all the students who have been enrolled in our course but hasn't taken a quiz. When the email all the students who haven't logged into our particular course in the last 15 days, or the kind of more achievement-based stuff where we want to email all the students and congratulate them on achieving a high score. This is stuff and tools that we can set up once and you never have to touch again. It's going to provide that time savings, that little manual stuff, but allows you to create that personalization at scale.
Yeah, you have to use the system. Like, we're not looking inside the system right now. But remember that construct that Jake just showed you? Those 3 different options for release conditions. So we can release content, we can do branching. So whether it's enrollment, whether it is I've done something as a student, whether I haven't done something as a student, this is now using that logic. You can create, so basically anything that happens in the system, you can create a trigger for, create a notification or release something. Which lends itself to a whole variety of pedagogical kind of this world of some interesting, cool things you can do. This is how we have supported competency-based education for the last 7 years. We do, and how we can then, really drive some very interesting things. But that's a long answer to say. Sorry. No, we're not using the if and or that. That's a pretty cool idea, actually. They can actually see this. It can be either or, right? Yeah, it can be either or. Because sometimes you want them to know that something's coming up, right? Well, by default, it's completely hidden. And it's up to you to say, hey, there's. So maybe you can show the competency base. Do we have that in here?
Yeah, sure.
So we'll show you an example right now of an interesting workflow that you can create as a program or as a faculty. This is an example of Jake.
Sure. So I'll just touch on this from a student perspective. Firstly, I'll just actually make you note that what we can see here is we have a prior learning assessment, and then we have 3 modules of content. And what's actually going to happen is based on our completion and our success of that prior learning assessment quiz, we're going to be dynamically released certain material. So as a student, if I achieve 75% in the competency that's achieved or related to module 1 here, then I'm not going to see that. If I'm incompetent or kind of insufficient to the criteria, then I'm automatically going to be receiving this. So what we can see here is just kind of the skeleton of this. We can see here that we have some particular conditions. If we receive less than 75% on some associated quiz questions, then I'm going to receive this particular content. Sure. So as you can see, what I've just done here up in the top right-hand corner is I'm now kind of looking at the platform from the student perspective. So when we're building out content, this is a good way to kind of just jump back in and actually see what the course is going to look like.
What's happening here is that everything's being hidden now until they take the prior learning assessment. They take a quiz, and based on the result of that, even right down to the question level in that quiz, it's saying, do they know this stuff or not? Right? It's skipping the stuff we know, giving them the information that we need. this is just an example. Like we're getting into some more advanced stuff here. This is not something every faculty member is going to be setting up in a course. This is important to understand as an instructor the things you could do with the system. And here you'll see that this right now.
Yep, sure. So we can see here, I took physics in high school, and it looks like friction. I'll just leave this one blank. So what essentially I'm going to do here is I'm going to essentially try to achieve 75% in that first competency, 0 on second competency. And if I've actually answered this correctly, we should see that I skip everything in module 1 and only see content to module 2. So now when I jump back to my table of contents, we can see here that in module 1, I'm getting an award. This is something in competency-based education that's very important. It's the idea of providing gamification principles, kind of incentivizing or inspiring your students about their success, as well as to kind of continue their progression throughout the course. So we can see here I receive an award, and that I don't have any other content in here. But in module 2, what I'm receiving is that kind of remedial content to kind of support my success towards this particular competency. Yep. Mhm. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Sure.
Start. Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start the course level? Right, we'll show you some. So, because first of all, there's course level analytics that your faculty need to operationalize and do the job day in day out. So, if Jay goes to the class progress tool, what you'll be able to see here is you can see a dashboard of student progress through a course. This is giving faculty a very nice, quick access to particulars of how someone is progressing, whether they want to create, and the instructor can say, actually, I'm not using objectives, but I want to see how much discussions they're going through in their course. This is a very powerful dashboard to understand. And if you want to dig down into it, Jay can just go in here and I can choose an individual person like Megan here. I can see specifically content, for instance. Where has she gone to? How much time has she spent on it? What time did she go to it? Right? At what location did she come and view this from? When we get into things like quizzes, we can even see, and this is a lot of history, but even in quizzes, we can see the details of the attempts. Okay, like the attempt, for instance, and I think that
Yep.
we can actually see that data, but we can, with the log, we can actually go and see what minute that they actually went through, what second they did, where they actually took that test from. Now, this is all to say that we're capturing this information in a way to help faculty understand what's happening with students, but then that data can be used institutionally. It can also be used in ways that maybe you haven't thought of before to help with your students.
Like you said, inside that sense, we talk about location.
Well, in our data sets, we can say where we're in a course. We're not surfacing like that, but it is more of a geographic profile based on IP address. Is what I was referring to in that sense. We're doing a bunch of work right now around getting real-time clickstream data into a data warehouse that we can do some really interesting things with now. There's been a problem in this business about getting data, but it being not in real time. So being able to get real-time data is where we're at today. Can we show student success?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
This question is right. So like earlier we're talking about automated question, automated responses that you push out. Can that also be at the global level? Institution side, automated responses.
So here's an example. So one of the things that we really, our clients are is how do we identify those at-risk students? And by the way, nobody has a silver bullet, right? There isn't one profile that's the profile. But what we've realized is that there are certain patterns in how students are, if you're not logging in, probably a good chance you're not engaged in your course. Or like whether it's, but then that might be different than, now if you're not communicating in the discussions or collaborating with students, it could be an indicator. So what we've created is this success index that if you back up more,
Sure.
you can actually see what students like red, yellow, green. Green, they're in good, their potential at risk is orange, at risk is red, right? But not only that, we can also see how they're trending. So if we look at potential risk here, we can go into Wesley's profile, and we can see that he wasn't doing this bad data, but we can see that he wasn't doing well, now he's at risk. He's trending in the right direction, but what is it? Looks like he's doing well in his assignments, but he hasn't actually accessed content, right? So there's interesting approaches here. I don't know if this is the best data set to look at, but even if you go into something like social, you can see that Wesley's an isolated learner. He's not collaborating with students. He's on his own and learning on his own. So trying to take these complex data sets and giving views to faculty so that they can make sense of what's happening with their courses, understand the relationship between students and the curriculum and the course they're engaged in. The next step for this, for us, is let's give this view to the student, right? Let's give this view to, and right now it's for like advisors and faculty, but how would the motivation change for a student if we gave them this information in their hands? So this is something we're using at the runway level for advisement and for instructors. This same data is available to you institutionally to slice and dice and figure out and create things like the nudges or the reports or the automated TA agents and start having things trigger across real time. Yeah. So this is where, like, even in this domain, some reason why saying creating content, social, and assessment. There's other domains that we can add to this to help make it a little more robust depending on what you're trying to assess. Yeah, I'm not sure what tool you're using now, but the yeah, some of the things we're working on is like what are the other criteria, the external factors, and demographic information, and we build that here. So again, it's not a silver bullet. This is our stake in the ground to say, hey, we've got data. There's some things we can be doing with it, right?
So you mentioned something earlier that was about having an objective, an outcome, an objective course, dragging content into an institution. Go increase the value of it.
Yeah. Let me go back out as an admin, come back in as a program admin here.
Sure.
So is this, I don't want to alienate folks that maybe don't, but is outcomes an important topic for folks in the room here in general? Everyone in this room, okay, good, okay. So let me take. So one of the things here that's super important is, we talked about it in the IT session, is this idea of organizational structure. So what we can create is an EKU implementation for D2L and then give like different setup programs underneath it, or the schools and programs, departments. This cascading hierarchy is super important because we have a unique ability to do things at those levels and give so let's say, for instance, there's the business school, or there's the liberal arts, and whatever it might be. We can give different hierarchical rights to those programs. More importantly, we can create things, we call them competencies, but we can create learning outcomes. These learning outcomes can be hierarchical competency, learning outcome, learning objectives, institutional competencies here, where we say, here's the institutional level competencies for gen ed requirements, communication and writing, critical thinking, information literacy, mathematics. These are just examples. These can be multi-layered, multi-hierarchical outcome structures that, when being created at this level, can then be said, okay, this set of outcomes are for this program. This set of outcomes are for this program. It could be a global set of outcomes, and it might be even at the course level. So being able to create these hierarchies and then push them down so that they are not, it's not cumbersome on the faculty to have to recreate these, or we want to standardize them typically, but maybe there are faculty that want to create these outcomes for their course level, right? So we kind of template them across the institution. Now, when you're at a course level, now we will make sure at the course level, it's very simple for them to, so where were we in here? We were working through physics, or was it the English course? The physics course. So we have a physics course here, for instance, and Jake showed you the drag and drop ability to take those outcomes and bring them over. Another way you might do it, for instance, here is I'm in my assignments. For this one assignment right here, this kinematic equations, I can edit this assignment. And what you'll see here is that we have objectives. This is where I can link that objective hierarchy to this particular assignment. Okay. And when I do that linking, so here, for instance, you'll see that I have, this is that hierarchy. I can see that this particular outcome is actually being linked to a series of accessible items. So in this case, it's not just, if I want to, if this learning objective is this one learning objective for given speed and motion, there's actually a number of elements that could potentially fulfill that objective. It's not necessarily just this one assignment. Could be. Am I going like this, or is this a good, okay. And then we'll use rubrics, and we can set the thresholds of rubrics of how we're going to assess these. So the idea is, as a student, I take one assignment, I submit my assignment, or I do my discussion, my accessible element, and that will report to my grade. I might get 75% in the grade book. Maybe that's a B, right? But at the same time, that one accessible step for the instructor can report back to multiple achievement thresholds throughout the institution, program, whatever it might be. All they have to do is make that association, and they grade once. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So when we go down to quizzes here, what you will see when we say I go into this dynamics quiz here, for instance, we'll edit this question. Here are the questions in here. If I go to objectives, I can get right down to associating specific questions to specific objectives. That's how when Jake did that prior learning assessment, if you got the first 2 questions wrong, it's saying you don't know that stuff, right? And it's releasing some curriculum. So this is where we also are allowing programs to do some really finite item analysis around outcome correlation to specific questions in a test. This is getting pretty deep, guys. This is good. Sorry. Okay. Yep.
Is there a system that's watching that and going, well, these, like, does someone have to do that, or is there an algorithm watching that there's trends?
The student success system that you like that tool that showed that's the first crack at it. There is not that system yet, that holistically to look at it. We're getting there. Seriously, like this is because you can't do that unless you have a proper aggregated data set that is structured in a way that you can do something with. That's been the whole problem in this business. BlackBoard struggled with it. Canvas is kind of doing their thing and getting you access to data. What we've done is we're now saying all the pertinent information, right, around the assessment domain, the achievement domain, and the engagement domains. We're going to capture that into what we call, it's like from a technical perspective, a Hadoop data cluster. And it's unstructured, but the relations are there. And so we don't even know what you're going to do with that information yet. We don't know what to do with it. Let's collect it. And then let's figure out what the answers are that questions we want answers to institutionally. And so that's step 1. Meanwhile, we're kind of starting dabbling in some of these things like student success and predictive. But you're right, you need that data first, right? And not only data from the LMS, but you need the data from the ecosystems of third-party tools you're using too, right? So, can you log me in this round? Yeah. The programs and the departments. Yeah. 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 Sure. Okay. Yes. They lived in that competency tool I showed you. Remember I had those outcomes defined? Yes. Yeah. So what we should do, if you're okay, at some point in the next 2 days, have a sidebar conversation where I can show you how or maybe it's in the ID. How do we do this? I want to take some time to explain it to you. We started this morning with the IT folks, but yeah, that hierarchical control. What we can do is, because you have those hierarchies defined, you create those assessment hierarchies in that central tool, and then you release it. And I say, this outcome hierarchy is going to be assigned to this node in the tree, right? And so that you don't have to burden one program with another's, right? So you create a high level and you push it down. Same thing we can do with rubrics, same thing we can do with grading schemes. Create up here, and then you push it down and then report on it systematically, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't still create something down lower as well. Okay, because we'll have some institutions that'll say, I want to graduate global citizens, and here's the institutional wide outcomes that we want grade 2 or to track 2. And then we've got the program within nursing, and nursing has its own things. And then, by the way, there's also this one outcome structure that spans these 2 programs. And you create them at that top level, but then you push them down and release them only to those that it's applicable for. When you do the reporting, it's the same. It'll slice based on those. Yes, so there's some planning. It's not a major boat. So as much as we want to say, hey, you can all do it, there is still planning around outcomes and around how you do the, but if you do it right within a program, you can get to the point where if it's a program or in a whole institution, you can push a button and see the map, the curriculum coverage map across outcomes, for instance. You can see the achievement thresholds across course and across program and individuals. But it does take some planning. The facility is there, though, within the platform to do that. So I don't want to say it's a magic bullet that magically all of a sudden happens. So one moment, there was a question. Yes. Yeah, they're linked directly to the assessment and the threshold of achievement that necessary to satisfy it. Yep, yep. And that's why we started by showing this conversation, how faculty can do that link. It's just a drag and drop and assigning a rubric to it. Now, again, there might be, maybe you're not doing this in your everyday course, right? This might be more for some certain programs or whatever, but there has to be that step where that association is made at the runway level. Nope, we won't do it. Yeah, well, we could do it, but we don't do it typically. This is in your control to define what those outcomes are. Now, with that said, we became curators last year of the Achievement Standards Network, which is the kind of a global open body of state standards, of program standards, and we've got a direct integration into our system that can let you go and just import standards directly into D2L and then use those. But that's a whole nother discussion for those that. Yep. 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 Yeah. So this is where you have that domain rights. So they'll show up and they'll see the program level assessments that are pushed down to them, and that they make these. But then they can say, hey, I want to create my own course level assessments. Yeah. We're getting close on time here. I know that we're over now at the top of the hour. We would love to probably wrap this, but I think at the same, there's a lot of things we haven't talked about, like portfolios, the social side, the collaborative. We haven't talked about, but this was a good, because I know we have the presence of institutional reporting, and it's an important topic. But we also have to be aware of the fact that as individual faculty, we're just trying to do the job of teaching. So it's like, how do we keep it simple? We got into some more advanced topics today, but the way that we approach it is, let's keep it simple at the presentation layer, and then as we abstract as much as we can to the program administration, so that when we're teaching courses, it's a matter of engagement and the system blends to the background, and we just are doing the basics. So we saw some of that around how easy it is to put multimedia into the course, how easy it is to put flexibility in how I want to design my course, drag and drop, things like that, but the intelligence as well to really understand what's happening at the course. But those same concepts of easy, flexible, smart can be looked at the program level, can you look at, and at the institution level as well, right? Ease of access to information, the flexibility of how you're going to get that data, and what you can do with that data in intelligent ways. So I hope this was a good introductory to D2L in our solution Brightspace, and take it from there. We'll be doing this again 3 more times. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah,